When my daughter-in-law said, "From now on, you'll be sleeping with the dog," I smiled and nodded. What she didn't know was that I owned everything, including the ground beneath her Louboutin heels, the $19 million, the seaside mansion, the investment portfolios, all mine, every single dollar. While she threw my bags into that filthy garage, I was already 10 steps ahead, watching her dig her own grave with a designer shovel. I didn't cry, I didn't beg, I just whispered to myself, "Game on, sweetheart." The rain hit the casket like bullets that November morning. Each drop seemed aimed purposeful, as if God himself was angry about what they were doing to Gordon Reed. I stood there, gripping my black umbrella, the same one my husband bought me at that little shop in London 15 years ago when we got caught in a downpour near Piccadilly. The wooden handle had a groove worn into it from all the times we'd shared it, our hands overlapping his thumb, always finding that same spot. Now my thumb rested there alone, and the emptiness of it made my chest tighten until I couldn't breathe properly. Memorial Oak Cemetery sprawled out in perfect rows, each headstone a life reduced to 2 dates and a platitude. The oak trees stood bare against the gray sky, their branches reaching up like skeletal hands, begging for mercy that wouldn't come. Somewhere behind me an organ wheezed out, "Amazing Grace," but it sounded thin and defeated, like even the music knew this was wrong, that Gordon shouldn't be here, that 68 was too young, that cancer was a thief that didn't discriminate. I wasn't alone. 40, maybe 50 people clustered around the grave, all dressed in black, all wearing the same mask of appropriate sadness. Gordon had been well-liked, respected, the kind of man who remembered birthdays, who showed up when you needed help moving furniture, who wrote checks to charities without demanding his name on plaques. These people had loved him, or at least appreciated him, and they'd come to say goodbye. But I was watching someone else, someone who wasn't saying goodbye at all. Sable stood 15 feet away, and she wasn't looking at the casket. Her eyes tracked across the crowd like a security camera, pausing on faces, calculating, assessing. She wore a black Chanel dress that probably cost $3,000, the kind of outfit you don't buy for funerals you buy because it photographs well. Her heels were Louboutin, the red soles flashing every time she shifted her weight, sinking slightly into the soft cemetery grass. Her makeup was flawless. Not the blotchy, tear-streaked face of someone grieving, but the carefully constructed mask of someone performing grief for an audience. When her eyes met mine, something cold slithered down my spine. She didn't offer sympathy, she offered assessment. Her gaze traveled from my face to my outdated black dress, to my sensible shoes, to the simple strand of pearls Gordon gave me on our 20th anniversary. I watched her dismiss me in 3 seconds flat. Old, irrelevant, obstacle. Then she smiled, just a flicker there and gone, but I saw it. And in that smile, I saw everything I needed to know about what came next. My son Nathan stood beside her, and the sight of him cracked something in my chest that the burial itself hadn't touched. His face was swollen from crying, eyes red and raw, shoulders shaking with suppressed sobs. He'd worshipped his father. Gordon had been patient with him, kind even when Nathan made mistakes, supportive even when Nathan's business ventures failed. Now Nathan looked lost, a 40-year-old man reduced to a frightened child, and I wanted to go to him to hold him like I had when he was 8 and his dog died. But Sable's hand rested on his arm, her red nails against his black suit sleeve, and the gesture looked supportive but felt possessive. When I took a step toward them, she tightened her grip, and Nathan didn't even notice. The priest droned on about resurrection and eternal life, about Gordon's generosity and devotion to family, but I barely heard him. I was too busy watching Sable check her phone. Actually, check her phone. At her father-in-law's funeral. She angled it so Nathan couldn't see, read something that made her mouth curve slightly, then typed a quick response before slipping it back into her clutch. When they lowered the casket, when those awful chains creaked and groaned and took my husband down into the earth, I stepped forward and placed my hand on the smooth mahogany one last time. The wood was cold, already slick with rain. I bent close and whispered, "Rest easy, love. I'll handle this. I promise." I didn't know then that this would turn into a war. I didn't know that my promise would require me to become someone I'd never been before. As people dispersed toward their cars, Sable appeared at my elbow. Her grip was firm enough to bruise. "We should go, Mother Cassandra." She used my formal name like a weapon, creating distance. "People are waiting at the house." The house. She said it like it was already hers, like the moment Gordon's heart stopped, the deed had transferred. I should have heard the warning, but grief had made me stupid slow. I just nodded and let her steer me toward the black Mercedes. Nathan drove with white knuckles staring straight ahead. Sable rode shotgun, scrolling through her phone. I sat in back, surrounded by leather and silence, and the ghost of Gordon's cologne still clinging to the seats. Nobody spoke. The only sound was the windshield wipers beating a rhythm that sounded like a countdown. I watched Houston slide past the rain-streaked windows. Downtown's glass towers gave way to river oaks, where houses hid behind iron gates and ancient oaks. This was my neighborhood, had been for 20 years. But that morning it looked foreign, unwelcoming, like I was seeing it through the eyes of someone who no longer belonged. When we turned onto our street, my stomach dropped. Something was wrong. I could feel it in my bones, that animal instinct that saved our ancestors from predators. The house looked the same, white columns and black shutters, and the magnolia tree Gordon planted the year we moved in. But something felt off, like walking into your home and knowing someone's been there, moved things, violated the space. The car stopped. I reached for the door handle and froze. 3 brown leather suitcases sat beside the garage, already dark with rain. My suitcases, the expensive set Gordon bought me for our 40th anniversary trip to Italy. They sat there like abandoned luggage, like someone had missed their flight and left everything behind. My brain stuttered, trying to process. These were the bags I'd packed 3 days ago when Nathan insisted I stay with them after the funeral. "You shouldn't be alone, Mom. Let us take care of you." His exact words. I'd believed him. I got out slowly, my legs unsteady. The air smelled like wet grass, and something else, something sharp and chemical. Sable was already on the porch, arms crossed, chin up every inch of her body. Language screaming ownership. Nathan stood behind her, studying his shoes like they were the most fascinating thing he'd ever seen. "What's happening?" My voice came out wrong, too rough, scraped raw from crying. "Why are my things outside?" Sable's smile could have cut glass. "I thought you understood, Mother Cassandra. Now that Gordon's gone, we need to make adjustments. The house is quite full with Nathan, myself, and the children. We simply don't have the space we initially thought." The words took a moment to land. Adjustments, no space. Corporate speak for get out. I looked at Nathan, waiting for him to contradict her, to remember he had a spine. But he just shifted his weight and mumbled something about it being temporary, about needing to rearrange things. "You said I could stay here." Each word came out carefully, precisely, like I was defusing a bomb. "You insisted." "Plans change." Sable shrugged, and the casualness of it felt like a slap. "We've arranged something more suitable, more practical." She walked to the garage and yanked the side door open. The smell hit me like a wall. Motor oil, damp concrete, rust, mildew. Gordon's old workshop, his tools still hanging on pegboards, his unfinished birdhouse collecting dust on the workbench. And in the corner behind the lawnmower and paint cans, I saw it. A narrow cot with a stained mattress, a folding table, a bare bulb hanging from a frayed cord. "You'll be comfortable here," Sable said brightly, like she was showing me a 5-star hotel suite. "It's quiet, private. You won't be in anyone's way." The garage. She wanted me to sleep in the garage, next to the lawn equipment and the dogs. I stood there in the rain, looking from the makeshift bed to my expensive luggage to my son's cowardly face, and something inside me crystallized. Not anger, not yet. Something colder, more dangerous. The feeling of a door slamming shut on one life and another door opening onto something I'd never imagined I'd have to become. The room next to the dogs. I said it quietly, testing the words. Sable heard and smiled wider. "Biscuit and Honey are family too, but they're well trained. You won't even know they're there." Nathan finally met my eyes. Guilt flickered across his face, but not enough to make him speak up, not enough to make him choose his mother over his wife. "It's just temporary, Mom. Just until we figure things out." "Figure what out?" I wanted to scream. "Figure out how to steal everything Gordon left me. Figure out how to make me disappear." But I didn't scream. Instead, I smiled. Small, quiet, the kind of smile that probably looked like defeat. I let them think that. Let them believe they'd won. "All right," I said softly, "if that's what you think is best." The relief on Nathan's face was almost funny. Sable's smile turned triumphant. Neither of them saw it. The shift, the change. The moment Cassandra Reed stopped being a victim and started planning war. I picked up my suitcases, leather handles slick with rain, and carried them into the garage one by one. The space was worse up close. The cot sagged like a hammock. The mattress was so thin I could see the metal frame through it. The concrete floor was stained with oil and God knew what else. A small space heater sat unplugged in the corner, probably broken. The window was narrow and high, offering a view of nothing but the fence and trash cans. On the folding table, someone had left a box of stale crackers and a plastic cup, not even real glass. A plastic cup like I was a child who couldn't be trusted with breakables. I set my bags down and sat on the cot. It groaned in protest. Through the thin walls, I heard Sable's voice, bright and cheerful, greeting the funeral reception guests. I heard her laugh. Actually laugh. At her father-in-law's funeral reception. I should have gone inside. There would be food people wanting to pay respects, old friends. But I couldn't face them. Couldn't stand there smiling while inside I was screaming. So I stayed in the garage, sitting on that horrible cot, listening to the sounds of my husband's funeral reception happening without me. Biscuit, the older lab, patted over and rested his chin on my knee. I stroked his soft head, grateful for even that small comfort, that tiny acknowledgement that I still existed, still mattered to someone even if it was just a dog. That's when the tears came. Not the dignified grief from the cemetery, but the ugly, wrenching sobs of someone who'd lost everything. I cried for Gordon, for the future we'd planned. I cried for Nathan, for the son I'd raised, who'd disappeared into this stranger. I cried for myself, for the woman I'd been that morning who still believed family meant something. But even as I cried, part of my mind stayed perfectly clear, perfectly cold. That part was remembering something Gordon told me years ago when he was teaching me about business, about negotiation, about power. Cass, the most dangerous person in any room is the one who has nothing left to lose. They'll do things rational people won't consider. They're free in a way the rest of us can't imagine. I hadn't understood then. I understood now. Sitting in that garage, treated like garbage by my own son, I realized I'd just become that person. The person with nothing left to lose. Gordon was gone. My home was being stolen. My dignity had been stripped away. But what Sable didn't know, what Nathan had apparently forgotten, or never fully understood, was that Gordon hadn't just been successful. He'd been careful, meticulous, a man who planned for every possible future, including the one where he died first and left me alone. The money. God, the money. More than Nathan and Sable could dream of. There were investments, properties, accounts, scattered across different banks and different states. There was the beach house in Cancun, that sprawling villa overlooking the ocean that Gordon bought for our 40th anniversary. We'd only been there twice before he got sick, and every single asset, every dollar, every deed was in my name. Not joint ownership, not a trust Nathan could access. My name alone. Cassandra Marie Reed. Gordon had done it quietly, methodically over several years. He'd never told Nathan the full extent of what he'd built. A man should make his own fortune, he'd said. He'd been generous setting up education funds for Ava and Liam, helping Nathan start his business. But the real wealth, the core assets, those he'd protected. Protected for me. If something happens to me, Cass, he'd said during one of our last real conversations, when the cancer was stealing his strength, but not yet his clarity. Promise me you won't let anyone make you feel small. You've earned every penny of what we built together. Don't let Nathan's guilt or anyone else's greed make you forget that. I'd promised, not really understanding. Now lying in the dark garage with the sound of rain on metal and dogs breathing softly, I understood perfectly. Gordon had known. Maybe not the specifics, maybe he hadn't predicted the garage, but he'd known the pattern. The way some people see the elderly as obstacles. The way money brings out the worst in those who've never earned it. I pulled the thin blanket up and smiled in the darkness. Let them think they'd won. Let Sable believe she'd successfully pushed me aside. Let Nathan convince himself this was temporary, that he wasn't complicit in cruelty. Because while they slept in their comfortable beds in the house Gordon and I built, I would be planning. Not revenge. That was too crude. What I would be planning was justice. A reckoning. A reminder of exactly who Cassandra Reed was beneath the role of dutiful wife and accommodating mother. The rain stopped around midnight, but I barely noticed. I was too busy thinking about tomorrow, about the first moves I'd make. I would be quiet, compliant, exactly what they expected. I would play the confused widow, the diminished old woman who didn't quite understand. And while I played that role, I would be documenting everything, gathering evidence, building the case that would eventually destroy them. Gordon used to say patience was the most underrated virtue in business, that the winners weren't always the smartest or fastest, but the ones who could wait for exactly the right moment to strike. I'd learned a lot in 42 years of marriage to a man like that. As I drifted toward sleep, I whispered one more promise to Gordon. I'll make you proud, love. I'll show them what you saw in me. I'll show them that Cassandra Reed is nobody's fool. The next morning announced itself with dogs barking and footsteps overhead, water running through pipes, voices calling out morning routines, the sounds of a family I was no longer part of. I got up slowly, body aching from the terrible mattress, and looked at myself in the cracked mirror above the rusty sink. I looked old, not just 60, but defeated and visible, the kind of old that makes people look right through you. Perfect. I dressed in a plain gray dress, pulled my hair back, and made my way to the main house. The kitchen was full. Nathan at the table with his phone and cereal, Ava and Liam arguing in those high-pitched voices of children who know their parents aren't listening, and Sable at the counter, already perfect in yoga pants and designer top hair and makeup, camera ready at 7 in the morning. She looked up when I entered, and for a split second, surprise flickered across her face, like she'd half expected me to disappear in the night. But the expression vanished instantly, replaced by that bright, false cheerfulness. Mother Cassandra. You're up early. I was going to bring you breakfast later. Later, meaning when convenient, meaning leftovers. I smiled that same small smile from yesterday. That's all right, dear. I thought I'd make myself useful. What would you like for breakfast? Nathan's head came up, confusion crossing his face. Sable recovered faster, her smile widening. Well, if you're offering, Nathan loves Eggs Benedict. The children prefer pancakes. And I'm being good, so just a fruit smoothie for me. She rattled this off while checking her phone, not even looking at me. Behind her, I saw Ava watching me with wide, uncertain eyes. She was 8, old enough to sense something wrong, but not old enough to understand it. I moved through the kitchen, mechanically pulling out ingredients. This had been my kitchen for 20 years. I'd chosen the granite counters, the copper fixtures, the sink Gordon joked was big enough to bathe a child in. I'd cooked thousands of meals here, hosted dozens of parties. Now I was a stranger in it, unpaid labor, expected to be grateful for the chance to serve. But I didn't let it show. I just cooked. Eggs Benedict came out perfect, hollandaise smooth and lemony, pancakes golden and fluffy. I set the food on the table and Nathan mumbled thanks without looking up. Sable nodded, already sipping her smoothie nose, wrinkling at the kale. The children ate with the enthusiasm of youth too hungry for manners. Nobody suggested I sit down. Nobody asked if I'd eaten. Nobody acknowledged anything was wrong. I stood by the counter and watched the meat food I'd prepared in a house I'd lived in and felt that cold clarity sharpen into something harder. After breakfast, while Sable was upstairs getting ready, Ava approached me at the sink. "Grandma," she said softly, "why are you sleeping in the garage?" The question was so direct, so innocent, it almost broke my composure. I looked down at her sweet face and saw genuine confusion. "It's just temporary, sweetheart, while your parents figure some things out." "But it's cold in there, and it smells like the car place." "I know, but I'm tough. Did you know your grandpa used to say I was the toughest person he ever met? That made her smile. Really, really. He said I could survive anything if I set my mind to it. She hugged me, then wrapping thin arms around my waist. Over her head, I saw Liam watching, troubled in that way kids get when they sense adults doing something that doesn't match what they've been taught about kindness. "You two better get ready for school," I said gently. "Don't want to be late." They scattered, and I was alone in the kitchen. Through the window I could see the magnolia tree Gordon planted. 20 years ago, he dug the hole himself, shirt soaked with sweat. "This tree will outlive us both, Cass. Long after we're gone, it'll still be here, getting stronger every year." He'd been right. The tree had survived hurricanes, droughts, brutal Texas heat. It had endured. Maybe that's what I needed to do. Not fight yet, just endure. Root myself deep. Wait. The rest of the day passed in a blur of chores. Sable left for a meeting, dressed more for lunch at an expensive restaurant than business. Nathan went to work. I was left with laundry vacuuming errands. Every task presented as a favor I could do, but the message was clear. This was my worth now. I did it all without complaint, keeping that pleasant smile, that air of mild confusion. And all the while, I was watching. The expensive handbag Sable carried, the way she checked her phone, constantly smiling at messages from someone unnamed, the credit card statements stacked on the desk in Gordon's study. By evening, when everyone was home and I'd made pot roast for dinner, I was exhausted in a way that had nothing to do with physical labor. It was the exhaustion of constantly performing, pretending to be smaller than I was. We ate in near silence. Sable monologued about her day, some story about a woman at yoga who'd taken her spot. Nathan grunted acknowledgement. Nobody asked about my day. Nobody wondered how I was adjusting. I was scenery. Background noise. The help. After dinner, I retreated to the garage. The thin walls did nothing to block sound. I heard laughter from the living room TV, Sable's delighted voice. Later, after the children were in bed, voices raised in argument. Nathan's low rumble placating, Sable's sharp response demanding. Then silence. He'd given in. He always did. I sat on the cot and pulled out a small notebook from my purse. On the first page, I wrote the date and a simple entry. Day 1, treated as servant. S showed contempt. N showed cowardice. Children confused but kind. My back aches, but I'm still here. It wasn't much, but it was a start. Documentation. Evidence. Gordon always emphasized the importance of records. Memory is unreliable, Cass. Write it down. Dates, times, exact words. You never know when you'll need proof. So I would write it all down. Every slight, every dismissal, every moment of disrespect. And when the time came, I would have a record that couldn't be disputed. But that time wasn't now. Now was for watching, learning, understanding their plan before I countered it. I closed the notebook and lay down. Through the narrow window, I could see a sliver of night sky, stars struggling against city lights. I found the brightest one and whispered to it. "I'm still here, love. They think they've broken me, but they're wrong. You didn't marry a woman who breaks easily. You married a fighter, and they're about to find out you were right." The star twinkled, or maybe it was my tired eyes. Either way, I took it as a sign. Sleep came slowly, interrupted by cold and discomfort and the sounds of people who'd forgotten I existed. But when it finally came, I dreamed of Gordon. We were young, standing in front of the house we'd just bought, planning all the things we'd do. "This is ours, Cass," Dream Gordon said. "Nobody can take that away from us." I woke with tears on my face, but also with determination, purpose, the certainty that I wasn't going to let this be the end of my story. Cassandra Reed hadn't survived 60 years of life just to end up forgotten in a garage. The second day proved the first wasn't an aberration. It was the new normal. Sable had a list of chores waiting. Reorganize the pantry. The linen closet was a disaster. The guest bathroom needed deep cleaning. Never mind that I'd cleaned that bathroom 2 weeks ago before Gordon died, when I was still the lady of a different house. Now I was the maid, unpaid. I took the list with a smile and got to work, knees protesting as I scrubbed tile back, aching as I reached for high shelves. Around mid-morning, Sable left again. Another meeting. Designer dress, high heels, enough perfume to choke someone. I watched her BMW pull away and wondered where she was really going. The house fell quiet. Just me and the ticking grandfather clock, the one Gordon inherited from his father. I stopped cleaning and stood in the foyer, really looking at the space. Everything was the same, but different. Furniture arranged slightly differently. New throw pillows, different rug, small changes that added up to a message. This wasn't my house anymore. Sable was erasing me. I felt anger hot and sudden and had to close my eyes and breathe through it. Anger was dangerous, made you careless. I needed to stay cold, calculated. By the time Nathan came home that evening, I'd finished Sable's list and started dinner. He found me in the kitchen, stirring sauce, and stood in the doorway. "Mom," he said uncertainly, "are you okay?" The absurdity of the question almost made me laugh. I was sleeping in a garage, being treated like hired help mourning my husband, but I didn't say that. I turned and smiled. "I'm fine, dear. Just making dinner. Your father's recipe." Nathan flinched at the mention of Gordon. "Mom, about the sleeping arrangements. It really is temporary. Sable and I are trying to figure out the best way to make everything work." Make everything work. Careful, meaningless words. "I understand," I said gently. "You and Sable have a lot on your plate." He looked relieved, like my compliance absolved him. "Thanks, Mom. Dad always said you were the most understanding person he ever met." After he left, I stood at the stove and felt the full weight of that betrayal. Gordon had meant it as praise for my empathy. He'd never meant it as permission for people to walk all over me. That night, after everyone had gone to bed, I did something different. I took out my phone and opened the browser. Searched for things I'd been thinking about. Galveston property values, beach house rental rates, business incorporation in Texas. I spent an hour reading, learning, understanding the pieces of Gordon's financial puzzle. Some I already knew, some was new information I'd never bothered to grasp because Gordon handled details. Now those details mattered. They were ammunition. At one point I heard footsteps overhead, someone moving through the house. The steps paused outside the garage door. I held my breath. After a moment, the steps moved away. A door closed. I went back to my phone, making notes in a private document with a password they'd never guess. Numbers, addresses, account names. The architecture of my financial life documented and secured. When I finally put the phone away, I felt like myself again. Not the grieving widow, not the dismissed mother-in-law, just Cassandra Reed, a woman who'd built something meaningful and wasn't about to let anyone steal it. The third morning started like the others. Cold, uncomfortable bed family stirring upstairs. But this time, when I went up to make breakfast, I noticed something different. Sable was on the phone in the living room, voice low but agitated. I caught fragments. "Needs to be soon. Can't wait much longer. Yes, I'm sure she doesn't know." She looked up, saw me, and her expression shifted instantly. Bright false. "Mother Cassandra, you're up early again." She ended the call abruptly, but my mind was racing. Who was she talking to? What didn't I know? Why did it need to happen soon? I made scrambled eggs and toast, and while they cooked, I thought about the oddities. Sable's frequent meetings, hushed conversations that stopped when I entered rooms, papers on Nathan's desk that he'd quickly covered, pieces of a puzzle I couldn't see yet. After breakfast, while Sable was in the shower, I did something risky. I went into Gordon's study and looked at those papers. My hands shook as I lifted the magazine covering them. The letterhead belonged to Morton and Associates, Gordon's lawyers. The document was titled Petition for Competency Evaluation. I scanned the text, heart pounding. Nathan was petitioning to have me declared mentally incompetent. The petition claimed I was confused, unable to make sound decisions, needed a guardian to manage my affairs. And who was suggested as guardian Nathan and Sable? I carefully replaced the magazine and walked out on shaking legs. They weren't just pushing me aside. They were trying to take legal control of everything I owned. If they succeeded, Nathan would have access to all accounts, all properties, everything Gordon had protected for me. and based on what I'd seen, I'd never see a penny. The garage had never felt colder. I sat on the cot wrapped in the blanket, forcing myself to think clearly. Panic wouldn't help. Anger wouldn't help. I needed a plan, fast. If they were already filing documents, I didn't have months. I needed to act, but I also needed to be smart. If I confronted them now, they'd deny everything, accelerate their timeline, lock me out. I needed help, someone who understood law, who could guide me without tipping them off. I pulled out my phone and stared at it before making the call I'd been avoiding. Caleb Morton, Gordon's lawyer, his friend, one of the few people who knew the full extent of what Gordon had left me. The call went to voicemail. "Caleb, it's Cassandra Reed. I need to see you as soon as possible. It's urgent. Please call me back." Then I waited, trying to act normal when Sable came home, when Nathan returned, when evening played out like nothing was wrong. I made dinner, cleaned up, smiled, and nodded. But inside, I was screaming. Caleb called back just after 9. I was in the garage, phone pressed to my ear, speaking in whispers. "Cassandra," he said, voice warm with sympathy. "I'm so sorry about Gordon." "What's wrong?" I told him. "Not everything, but enough. The garage, the petition, the treatment." He went silent. The kind of silence that meant he was processing, calculating, getting angry. Finally, he spoke, voice harder than I'd ever heard it. "Come to my office tomorrow morning, 9 o'clock. Don't tell Nathan or Sable where you're going. We need to move fast, Cassandra. They're making a play for your assets, and we need to shut it down." I agreed and hung up, then lay in the dark, feeling fear and excitement. Tomorrow, things would change. Tomorrow, I would stop being passive. Tomorrow, Cassandra Reed would start fighting back. But tonight, I would sleep in this garage one more time. Let them think they'd won. Let them believe I was broken and easy to manipulate. Because the best victories come from being underestimated. And nobody had ever underestimated me more than they were doing right now. I closed my eyes and whispered into the dark. "Watch me, Gordon. Watch what I'm about to do. Everything I learned about strength and patience and fighting smart, I learned from you. They think this is over. They have no idea it's just beginning." Outside wind rattled the garage door. The bulb swayed on its cord. A door slammed somewhere in the house. The dogs stirred. And I lay there, no longer cold, no longer defeated, already planning my first move. Because that's the thing about being pushed to the bottom. Once you're there, the only direction left is up. And I was about to rise in a way that would shake everything they thought they knew. The garage might be my prison tonight, but tomorrow it would become my war room, the place where Cassandra Reed stopped being a victim and became something far more dangerous. A woman with nothing left to lose and $19 million worth of reasons to fight. I woke up at 5:30 the next morning, not because the alarm went off, but because my body knew. Today was the day everything changed. Today I stopped pretending to be the helpless widow they thought I was. The garage was still dark cold, seeping up through the concrete floor and into my bones. I could hear Biscuit snoring softly in his bed across the room, a sound that had become oddly comforting over the past 3 days. 3 days. That's all it had been since Gordon's funeral, but it felt like 3 years. Like I'd lived an entire lifetime in this damp, oil-stained space. I got up quietly and used the tiny bathroom, splashing cold water on my face and looking at myself in the cracked mirror. The woman staring back looked tired, older than 60, but her eyes were different than they'd been yesterday. Sharper, more alert, the eyes of someone who'd made a decision and wasn't backing down. I dressed carefully in the nicest outfit I'd packed, a navy blue dress that Gordon always said made me look dignified, and pulled my hair into a neat bun. I applied light makeup just enough to look put together and slipped on the pearl earrings Gordon gave me on our 25th anniversary. Looking at myself one more time, I nodded. This was the Cassandra Reed who used to sit in board meetings with Gordon, who used to host charity galas, who used to matter. This was the Cassandra Reed I was taking back. The house was still asleep when I slipped out of the garage at 6:15. I'd called a cab the night before, asking the driver to park down the street so the engine wouldn't wake anyone. The morning air was cool and damp, carrying the smell of magnolia blossoms and freshly cut grass from the neighbor's yard. Normal suburban smells, the kind that made you think everything was fine, that the world was a safe and reasonable place. But I knew better now. The cab was waiting exactly where I'd asked, a yellow sedan with a driver who looked half asleep. I got in and gave him the address for Morton and Associates, then sat back and watched my house disappear in the side mirror. The house Gordon and I had bought together raised Nathan in, filled with laughter and love and all the ordinary moments that make up a life. Sable thought she owned it now. Nathan thought he could just give it to her without consequence. They were both wrong. Downtown Houston was just waking up when we arrived. The glass towers caught the early morning sun, throwing long shadows across the streets. People hurried along sidewalks with coffee cups and briefcases. Everyone focused on their own problems, their own lives. Nobody looked at the 60-year-old woman getting out of a cab in front of a law office. Nobody saw anything unusual. That was fine. I preferred being invisible right now. Morton and Associates occupied the 5th floor of an older building, the kind with marble floors and brass fixtures that spoke of old money and established reputation. I'd been here dozens of times with Gordon over the years, discussing estate planning and tax strategies and all the boring but necessary business of protecting wealth. But I'd always been the wife then, sitting quietly while Gordon and Caleb talked, nodding when they explained things to me like I was a child who needed simple words. Today, I was here alone. Today, I was the client. The elevator doors opened onto a reception area that smelled like leather and old books. A young woman sat at the desk, blonde and efficient-looking, and she smiled when she saw me. Professional, polite, the smile that said she had no idea who I was or why I was here. "Good morning. Do you have an appointment?" "Cassandra Reed to see Caleb Morton. He's expecting me." Something flickered in her eyes, recognition maybe, and her smile became more genuine. "Of course, Mrs. Reed. He said to send you right in as soon as you arrived. Can I get you coffee, tea?" "Coffee would be wonderful. Black, no sugar." She led me down a hallway lined with photographs of the firm's partners, through the decades serious men in suits, shaking hands and accepting awards. At the end of the hall, she knocked on a heavy wooden door and opened it without waiting for a response. "Mrs. Reed is here, Mr. Morton." Caleb stood up from behind his desk, and the sight of him made something in my chest loosen slightly. He was in his mid-60s, tall and solid with silver hair and kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. Gordon's best friend since college. The man who'd been best man at our wedding, who'd held Nathan when he was baptized, who'd sat with us in the hospital when Gordon got his diagnosis. He came around the desk and pulled me into a hug, and for a moment, I let myself be weak, let myself lean on someone who actually cared. "Cass," he said softly, and the nickname made tears prick my eyes. Only Gordon and Caleb ever called me that. "I'm so sorry. About everything." I pulled back and wiped my eyes quickly. "I don't have time to fall apart, Caleb. I need your help." "Sit down." He gestured to the leather chairs in front of his desk. "Tell me everything from the beginning." So I did. I told him about the funeral, about Sable's cold assessment of the crowd, about coming home to find my bags in the rain. I told him about the garage, about being treated like a servant, about the hushed phone calls, and the petition I'd found. I watched his face get harder with every sentence, watched his jaw clench, and his hands grip the arms of his chair. When I finished, he was quiet for a long moment. Then he stood up and walked to the window, looking out over the city. "That son of a bitch," he said quietly. Caleb language. He turned back to me, and there was something fierce in his eyes. "No, Cass. Gordon was my best friend for 40 years. I made him a promise before he died that I'd look after you, and I failed. I should have checked on you sooner. I should have known Nathan would pull something like this." "You couldn't have known." "I should have." He came back to the desk and pulled out a thick file, the same blue cover I'd seen in his office before. "Let me show you something. This is everything Gordon set up for you. Every account, every property, every investment. Do you know how much you're actually worth, Cass?" I shook my head. "Gordon always said around 19 million. That was 3 years ago. With the way the markets performed and the appreciation on the Cancun property, you're currently sitting at just over $23 million. And every single penny of it is in your name, not Nathan's, not a trust he can access. yours. The number was so big, it didn't feel real. 23 million. I'd known Gordon had done well, that we were comfortable, but this was something else entirely. Caleb opened the file and started pulling out documents. The Houston house is in your name. The Cancun villa is in your name, held in a Mexican fideicomiso that gives you full ownership rights. The investment portfolio, the retirement accounts, the bonds, all yours. Gordon spent years moving everything into your name exclusively because he was terrified of exactly this scenario. He knew Nathan would try this. He worried. After Nathan married Sable, Gordon started noticing things. The way she talked about money, the way she spent it, the way she looked at you and him like you were obstacles instead of people. Caleb pushed a document across the desk to me. Read the note he left with the final paperwork. I picked it up with shaking hands. Gordon's handwriting slightly slanted the letters firm and clear. Caleb makes sure Cass never has to depend on anyone. Make sure she never has to ask permission to live in her own home. Nathan is a good boy but weak when it comes to that woman. If anything happens to me, protect Cass. She's stronger than she knows, but she'll need someone in her corner. Be that person. I'm counting on you. I pressed the paper to my chest, feeling Gordon's presence so strongly it hurt. He'd known. He'd seen this coming and tried to protect me. What do I do? My voice came out rough. They're already filing paperwork to have me declared incompetent. Caleb's smile was sharp and cold. That petition is going nowhere. I've already contacted Judge Harrison. He's an old friend and explained the situation. He's going to request a full psychiatric evaluation from an independent expert, not the hack doctor I'm sure Sable has lined up. And in the meantime, I'm filing an emergency protective order. What does that mean? It means, as of this morning, Nathan and Sable cannot sell, transfer, or encumber any property that's in your name. It freezes everything until the competency hearing. And trust me, Cass, when you walk into that hearing, you're going to blow their whole case apart. Hope fluttered in my chest, fragile but real. What about the house? Can they kick me out? The River Oaks house is yours. Gordon put it in your name 5 years ago. He pulled out another document, a property deed with my name on it. Nathan has been living there at your pleasure. Legally, you can kick him out whenever you want. The power in that statement took my breath away. I don't want to kick him out. He's still my son. I just want him to treat me like a human being. Caleb's expression softened. I know, but you need to understand something, Cass. Sable isn't going to give up easily. She's clearly got Nathan convinced that this is the right thing to do, that you're confused and need help. When she realizes you're fighting back, things are going to get ugly. They're already ugly. I'm sleeping in a garage. Not anymore, you're not. He picked up his phone and pressed a button. Sarah, can you come in here, please? The receptionist appeared in the doorway. Yes, Mr. Morton. I need you to arrange a hotel suite for Mrs. Reed, the Four Seasons executive level. Open-ended reservation, all charges to the firm account. Caleb, no. I started to stand. I can't let you do that. You're not letting me do anything. This is billable hours, Cass. You're my client now, and I'm advising you that staying in that garage is both dangerous to your health and damaging to your legal position. A competency evaluation is going to look at your living conditions. If you're living in squalor, it plays into their narrative. He was right. I hated it, but he was right. Sarah nodded and disappeared. Caleb sat back down and pulled out a legal pad. Now I need you to write down everything. Every conversation, every time they've asked you to do something, every moment of disrespect. Dates, times, exact words if you remember them. Can you do that? I've already started. I pulled out my small notebook and handed it to him. Just the last 3 days, but it's all there. He read through it, his expression getting darker. When he finished, he looked up at me with something like admiration. Gordon always said you were the smart one in the relationship. Gordon said a lot of things. He was right about most of them. Caleb closed the notebook and handed it back. Keep writing, every day, every interaction. This is evidence, Cass. This is what's going to save you. We spent the next 2 hours going through everything. He showed me account statements, property valuations, investment portfolios. explained how Gordon had structured everything to protect me, to make sure I'd be taken care of. By the time we finished, my head was spinning with numbers and legal terms, but I understood one thing clearly. I wasn't helpless. I never had been. When I finally stood to leave, Caleb walked me to the door. "One more thing, Cass. Don't tell Nathan or Sable that you came to see me. Let them think you're still the confused widow. Let them keep underestimating you." "I'm good at being underestimated." "I know you are." He squeezed my hand. "Gordon would be proud of you." The cab dropped me back at the house just before noon. I'd timed it carefully, knowing Nathan would be at work, and Sable would likely be out at one of her mysterious meetings. The house was quiet when I let myself in through the garage, and for a moment I just stood there looking at the space that had been my prison for 3 days. It looked different now, smaller, less frightening. I went upstairs to the kitchen and made myself a sandwich, eating it standing at the counter while I looked out at the magnolia tree. My magnolia tree in my yard at my house. The thought made me smile. I was washing my plate when I heard the front door open. Sable's voice carried through the house, bright and fake, talking to someone on her phone. I know, but it'll be worth it. Once we have control of the accounts, we can finally move forward with the Dallas property. Nathan doesn't need to know all the details." I froze, listening. The old bat is completely clueless. She's been doing exactly what I tell her, cooking and cleaning like a good little servant. By the time she figures out what's happening, it'll be too late. Something cold and hard settled in my stomach. Not anger, something colder, more dangerous. I dried my hands and walked into the living room. Sable was standing by the window, phone pressed to her ear, and she didn't hear me approach. She was wearing a tight red dress and heels, her hair perfectly styled, looking nothing like someone who'd just lost her father-in-law 3 days ago. "Sable," I said quietly. She spun around, eyes going wide. "Mother Cassandra, I didn't know you were home." "Clearly." I kept my voice pleasant, my smile small. "Who were you talking to?" "Oh, just a friend. Real estate stuff, very boring." She waved her hand dismissively. "Did you finish the guest bathroom?" "I did. It's sparkling." "Good." She turned back to the window, already dismissing me. "Can you make dinner tonight? Nathan's bringing a client home. Something impressive, okay? Not just pot roast." "Of course." I started to leave, then paused. "Sable, can I ask you something?" She sighed, the sound of someone being deeply inconvenienced. "What? Do you think I'm stupid?" The question seemed to surprise her. She turned back to me, eyebrows raised. "What kind of question is that?" "A simple one. Do you think I'm stupid, or just old and irrelevant?" Something flickered across her face. Wariness, maybe. "I think you're grieving and confused, which is why Nathan and I are trying to help you. By putting me in the garage. By giving you a place to stay when you have nowhere else to go." Her voice had an edge, now irritation creeping through the false sweetness. "You should be grateful, Mother Cassandra. Not everyone would take in their husband's mother." I looked at her for a long moment, really looked at her. She was beautiful, I had to give her that. Perfect skin, perfect hair, perfect everything. But there was something empty behind her eyes, something cold and calculating that I'd mistaken for grief at the funeral. "You're right," I said finally. "Not everyone would. You're very generous." The tension in her shoulders relaxed. She thought she'd won, thought she'd put me back in my place. "I'm glad you understand. Now about dinner. The client is very important, so please don't embarrass Nathan." "I would never embarrass Nathan." I went back downstairs to the garage, but this time I didn't feel small or defeated. I felt clear, focused. I knew exactly what I was dealing with now. Sable wasn't just greedy. She was cruel. And she thought I was too stupid to fight back. That was going to be her biggest mistake. I spent the afternoon in the garage, lying on that terrible cot and making plans. Caleb had said not to tip my hand to keep playing the role of confused widow. So that's what I'd do. I'd cook dinner for Nathan's client. I'd smile and nod and be invisible. But while I was invisible, I'd be watching, learning, gathering ammunition. Around 4 o'clock, my phone buzzed with a text from Caleb. Hotel suite ready whenever you want it. Just say the word. I stared at the message for a long time. I could leave right now, pack my bags and walk out and never sleep in this garage again. I had the money, the resources, the legal right. But something made me hesitate. If I left now, Sable would know something had changed. She'd know I was fighting back, and she'd adjust her strategy. No, I needed to stay a little longer, needed to see what else she was planning. I texted back, "Not yet, soon." His response came immediately, "Be careful." At 5:30, I went upstairs and started making dinner. Sable had said something impressive, so I decided on beef Wellington, one of Gordon's favorite dishes. I'd made it dozens of times for dinner parties, and my hands moved through the familiar motions without thinking. Searing the beef, making the duxelle, wrapping everything in pastry. Nathan came home at 6, his client in tow. The man was younger, maybe 35, wearing an expensive suit and carrying a leather briefcase. Nathan introduced him as Derek Cole, an investment broker who was helping him with some new opportunities. Derek Cole. The name rang a bell, but I couldn't place it. They settled in the living room with drinks while I finished dinner. Through the doorway, I could hear them talking, Nathan's voice eager and excited, Derek smooth and confident. Sable appeared right at 6:30, having changed into something even more revealing, and she immediately inserted herself into the conversation. I served dinner at 7, setting the table with the good china and lighting candles. As I brought out the Wellington perfectly golden and still steaming, Derek looked up and smiled. "Mrs. Reed, this looks absolutely incredible." "Thank you. It was my husband's favorite." Something passed between Derek and Sable, a look so quick I almost missed it. Recognition, familiarity, and suddenly I knew where I'd heard his name. He was the man from Sable's phone call, the one she'd been talking to about moving money about the Dallas property. I set the platter down carefully, keeping my expression neutral, and stepped back. "Please enjoy. I'll be downstairs if you need anything." "Mom, wait." Nathan looked uncomfortable. "You should join us." "Oh, I don't think," Sable started. "No, really. Derek, this is my mother, Cassandra Reed. Mom, Derek is helping me with a real estate investment opportunity, something that could really take off if we play it right." I sat down at the far end of the table, the seat I'd occupied at every dinner party Gordon and I had ever hosted. From here, I could see everyone's faces, could watch the dynamics play out. Derek launched into an explanation of the investment opportunity, something about mixed-use development in Dallas luxury condos with retail space on the ground floor. He made it sound exciting, lucrative, a can't-miss opportunity. Nathan hung on every word, eyes bright with the kind of desperate hope I'd seen before when he'd invested in other sure things that had fallen through. Sable watched Derek talk with an expression that made my stomach turn. She wasn't just interested in the investment. She was interested in him. The way her eyes tracked his movements, the way she smiled at his jokes, the way she leaned forward when he spoke. This wasn't business. This was something else entirely. "The only issue," Derek said, cutting into his Wellington, "is timing. We need to move fast, or we lose the opportunity to a group from California. They're ready to wire funds tomorrow." "How much are we talking about?" Nathan asked. "For a meaningful stake, about $300,000, but the projected return in 18 months is triple that. Conservative estimate." Nathan's face fell. "I don't have that kind of cash available right now. The business has most of my capital tied up." "What about the house?" Sable said quickly. "We could take out a line of credit." I kept my face neutral, kept eating my dinner like I wasn't really paying attention. But inside my mind was racing. The house they wanted to borrow against was mine. Did they even know that? "I don't know," Nathan said slowly. "That seems risky." "All investment is risky, Nathan." Sable's voice had an edge to it. "But this is a real opportunity. Derek wouldn't bring it to us if it wasn't solid." Derek smiled, smooth and reassuring. "Your wife is right. I've personally vetted every aspect of this deal. The developer has an excellent track record. The location is prime. The market fundamentals are strong. This is as close to a sure thing as you're going to find." I set my fork down gently. "May I ask a question?" All three of them looked at me like they'd forgotten I was there. "Of course, Mom." Nathan said. "What happens if the development doesn't perform as projected? Who bears the loss?" Derek's smile didn't waver. "That's a very astute question, Mrs. Reed. The investment is structured so that all participants share proportionally in both gains and losses. But I should emphasize that the risk is minimal. The developer has pre-sold 60% of the units already." "Pre-sold to whom?" "Various buyers. Mix of individual investors and institutional money." "And you've verified these pre-sales independently? Seen the actual contracts?" Something shifted in Derek's expression. His smile got a little tighter. "The developer has provided documentation, yes. But you haven't seen it personally." "Mrs. Reed, I assure you, I'm not questioning your assurance, Mr. Cole. I'm asking if you've personally verified the pre-sales. It's a simple yes or no question." Silence fell over the table. Nathan looked confused. Sable looked furious. Derek looked like he was reassessing me. "I've seen summary documents," he said finally. "Summary documents prepared by whom? The developer's sales team. So no, you haven't independently verified them." I picked up my fork again. "Thank you for clarifying." Sable's voice could have cut glass. "Mother Cassandra, I don't think you understand how these things work." "You're right, dear. I'm just a confused old widow. What would I know about investment due diligence?" I smiled sweetly. "Please continue. Don't let me interrupt." The rest of dinner was tense. Derek tried to get the conversation back on track, but Nathan kept glancing at me with a troubled expression. Sable was practically vibrating with anger, her jaws so tight I thought she might crack a tooth. When dessert was finished, I stood up and started clearing plates. "I'll just clean up and get out of your way." "Let me help you, Mom." Nathan stood up too. "No, you stay with your guest. I can manage." I carried dishes to the kitchen and started washing them, listening to the conversation in the other room pick back up. Derek's smooth voice, Sable's enthusiastic agreement, Nathan's hesitant questions. I wondered if he was starting to see it, the way Sable and Derek worked together, the way they played off each other. Like partners who'd done this before. 10 minutes later, Derek left. I heard him say goodbye, heard the front door close, heard his car start in the driveway. Then I heard Sable's voice sharp and angry. "What the hell was that?" "What was what?" Nathan sounded tired. "Your mother interrogating Derek like he's some kind of criminal. Do you have any idea how embarrassing that was? She just asked a few questions, Sable." "She made us look like idiots. Made me look like an idiot." Footsteps pacing. "And you just sat there and let her." "What did you want me to do? She had valid points." "Valid points. She's a confused old woman who doesn't understand modern investment strategies." I dried my hands and walked to the kitchen doorway. They were in the living room, Sable, standing with her arms crossed, Nathan sitting on the couch with his head in his hands. "I should go to bed," I said quietly. "Let you two talk." They both jumped, not realizing I was there. Sable recovered first, her expression smoothing into false concern. "Yes, you must be tired, all that cooking." "It was my pleasure." I looked at Nathan. "Your father and I always did our homework before investing in anything. He used to say that if someone gets defensive when you ask questions, it's because they don't have good answers. Just something to think about." I left before either of them could respond, went down to the garage and closed the door behind me. I could still hear them arguing upstairs, Sable's voice getting louder, Nathan's getting quieter. The same pattern I'd watched for 3 days. She pushed, he caved. But tonight, something was different. Tonight, Nathan was asking questions. I pulled out my notebook and wrote down everything that had happened at dinner. Derek Cole's name, the investment details, the way he'd gotten defensive when I pushed, the way Sable had looked at him, the way they'd worked together to pressure Nathan. Then I pulled out my phone and sent a text to Caleb. "Need you to look into someone. Derek Cole, investment broker. Claims to have a Dallas development deal. Something's off." His response came fast. "On it." I lay down on the cot and closed my eyes, but I wasn't tired. My mind was racing, putting pieces together. Sable and Derek knew each other. They were working together on something using Nathan as the mark. The competency petition wasn't just about getting my money. It was about getting Nathan's access to what they thought was his inheritance. They didn't know Gordon had protected me. They didn't know I owned everything. And when they found out, when they realized their whole plan was based on a false assumption, what would they do? I thought about that for a long time, lying in the dark garage listening to the argument upstairs finally die down. Thought about what Sable was capable of, how far she'd go to get what she wanted. Tomorrow, I'd call Caleb and tell him I was ready to leave, ready to move to the hotel and start fighting back properly. But tonight, I'd stay here one more night. Listen, watch. Learn everything I could before I made my move. Because Gordon was right about patience being underrated, and I was finally starting to understand what real patience looked like. It wasn't passive. It wasn't weak. It was waiting for exactly the right moment to strike so hard your enemy never saw it coming. I woke up to shouting, not the muffled kind that filtered through walls, but real, shouting the kind that meant someone had lost control. Sable's voice cut through the garage like a knife, high and sharp and furious. I don't care what your mother thinks, Nathan. This is our decision, not hers. She made good points, Sable. Derek got defensive when she asked basic questions. Because she was being rude. Because she was trying to sabotage us. I checked my phone. 6:20 in the morning. They'd been at it for a while then, or maybe they'd started up again after a sleepless night. I got dressed quickly and went upstairs following the voices to the kitchen. They were standing on opposite sides of the island. Nathan in his wrinkled work shirt from yesterday, Sable in a silk robe with her hair wild around her shoulders. Both of them looked exhausted. Neither of them noticed me in the doorway. "I'm not saying we shouldn't do it," Nathan said, rubbing his face. "I'm just saying we should slow down, do more research. We don't have time to slow down. The opportunity closes tomorrow." Sable slammed her hand on the counter. "This is exactly what I'm talking about. You're so afraid of taking risks that you're going to let everything pass us by." "I'm not afraid of risks. I'm afraid of losing $300,000 on something we haven't properly vetted." "We have vetted it. Derek vetted it. Derek works on commission Sable. Of course he's going to tell us it's a good deal." I cleared my throat softly. They both spun around, and the guilt on Nathan's face told me everything I needed to know. He'd been thinking about what I said at dinner, really thinking. "Good morning," I said quietly. "Should I make breakfast?" "Yes, please," Nathan said. At the same time, Sable said, "We're fine." They stared at each other for a moment, some silent battle of wills happening. Finally, Nathan turned to me. "Scrambled eggs would be great, Mom. Thanks." I moved around the kitchen, getting out eggs and butter and bread, while they continued their argument in lower voices. Sable kept bringing up the Dallas development, the opportunity, the potential returns. Nathan kept bringing up due diligence, verification, risk management. Words he'd learned from his father, I realized. Gordon's voice coming out of Nathan's mouth. When I set their plates in front of them, Sable looked at hers like I'd served her poison. Nathan ate mechanically, not tasting anything. The tension was so thick, I could have cut it with the knife I'd used on the tomatoes. "I have to go to work," Nathan said, finally pushing back from the table. He looked at me, and there was something in his eyes I hadn't seen in days. Uncertainty. Maybe even the beginning of doubt. "Mom, we should talk later, about your living situation." "Nathan, we already discussed this," Sable started. "No, you discussed it. I agreed because I was tired and grieving and not thinking clearly. But Mom's right. The garage isn't appropriate." Something fierce and hot flared in my chest. Hope, maybe. Or pride. My son was finally starting to wake up. Sable's face went very still. "We'll talk about this when you get home." "Yeah, we will." Nathan grabbed his keys and briefcase. "Mom, don't do anything today. Just rest, okay? We'll figure this out tonight." After he left, the silence in the kitchen felt dangerous. Sable sat at the island, not eating, not moving, just staring at her plate. I started washing dishes, keeping my movements slow and careful, trying not to trigger whatever was building behind those cold eyes. "You think you're clever, don't you?" Her voice was quiet, almost conversational. But there was something underneath it that made my hands still in the soapy water. "I'm sorry." playing the concerned mother, asking your innocent questions, making Nathan doubt everything. She turned to look at me, and her expression was nothing like the false sweetness she usually wore. This was pure hatred, undisguised. You have no idea what you're interfering with. I asked some questions about an investment. That's not interfering. You're trying to turn Nathan against me. I'm trying to protect my son from making a mistake. I dried my hands and turned to face her. That's what mothers do. You're not his mother anymore. You're a burden he's too guilty to get rid of. She stood up, and even in her robe and messy hair, she looked dangerous. But I'm not burdened by guilt, Cassandra, and I'm not going to let you ruin this for us. Ruin what exactly? A sketchy investment deal with a broker you're clearly sleeping with. The words were out before I could stop them. I'd meant to stay quiet to keep playing the role of confused widow, but something about the way she was looking at me, the pure contempt in her eyes made me snap. Sable went very pale, then very red. Excuse me. I saw the way you looked at him, the way he looked at you. You're not as subtle as you think. You crazy old bitch. She took a step toward me. You don't know anything about my life or my relationship with Nathan. I know you're planning to divorce him as soon as you get control of what you think is his inheritance. I found the paperwork, Sable, the petition to have me declared incompetent so you can access the accounts. She froze. For just a second, her mask slipped completely, and I saw shock and fear and calculation racing across her face. Then she laughed high and brittle. Paperwork. What paperwork? You're confused, Cassandra. You're seeing things that aren't there, which honestly just proves Nathan's point about needing supervision. I'm not confused, and I'm not stupid. I kept my voice level calm. But you are. You're stupid enough to think Gordon would leave everything to Nathan, stupid enough to think I wouldn't fight back. There's nothing to fight back against. You're an old woman living on her son's charity. No. I smiled, and it felt like the first real smile I'd worn in days. I'm a woman who owns this house, the Cancun villa, $23 million in assets, and every single thing you think Nathan inherited. It's all mine, Sable, every penny, and there's not a damn thing you can do about it. The color drained from her face. You're lying. Am I call Gordon's lawyer? His name is Caleb Morton. He'll be happy to explain the estate structure to you. She stared at me for a long moment, and I could see her mind working, trying to figure out if I was bluffing. Then she grabbed her phone and walked out of the kitchen. I heard her footsteps on the stairs, heard a door slam. My hands were shaking. I'd just blown my cover, revealed my hand way too early. Caleb was going to kill me. But something about Sable's threat, the way she'd looked at me like I was nothing, had made me crack. Or maybe I was just tired of being invisible. I went down to the garage and started packing my bags. I should have done this yesterday, should have gone to the hotel when Caleb offered. Now I needed to get out before Sable did something desperate. My phone rang as I was zipping up the second suitcase. Caleb, please tell me you didn't just tell Sable you own everything. How did you know? Because she just called my office screaming that you're lying to her and demanding to see Gordon's will. Cass, what were you thinking? I was thinking I'm tired of being treated like garbage in my own house. I sat down on the cot, suddenly exhausted. I'm sorry. I know you said to wait, but she threatened me, Caleb. She looked me in the eye and told me she was going to ruin everything. He was quiet for a moment. Are you safe right now? I think so. She's upstairs probably calling Derek to figure out what to do next. Pack your things. I'm sending a car to pick you up in 30 minutes. You're going to the Four Seasons, and you're not going back to that house until we have security measures in place. What about Nathan? What about him? He's a grown man who let his wife put his mother in a garage. He can figure things out on his own for a while. He was starting to come around this morning, starting to see through her. Good. Then maybe this will wake him up the rest of the way. Caleb's voice softened. Cass, I know he's your son. I know you want to protect him. But right now you need to protect yourself. Let Nathan deal with the consequences of the choices he's made. I knew he was right, but it still hurt the idea of leaving Nathan alone with Sable, leaving him to figure out on his own that the woman he'd married was a con artist who'd been planning to rob him blind. 30 minutes, Caleb said. The car will be a black town car driver's name is Marcus. Don't open the door for anyone else." After he hung up, I finished packing quickly. 3 suitcases, same as I'd arrived with, but somehow they felt lighter now, like I was packing away the old Cassandra, the one who'd let people walk all over her and making room for someone new. I was putting my toiletries in the last bag when I heard footsteps on the stairs. Not Sable's sharp heels, but smaller, quieter steps. The door opened, and Ava stood there still in her pajamas clutching a stuffed rabbit. "Grandma, are you leaving?" My heart cracked. "Just for a little while, sweetheart. I'm going to stay at a hotel." "Because of the garage. Because your mom and I need some space from each other." She walked closer, her eyes sad and confused. "I heard her yelling at you. She yells a lot lately." "I know, baby, but it's not your fault. Okay, none of this is your fault. Dad yells back now, too. They used to not fight this much." I pulled her into a hug, this sweet child who was caught in the middle of adult games she couldn't understand. "Your dad loves you very much. So do I. And no matter what happens between the grown-ups, that will never change. Are you mad at Dad?" "No, I'm disappointed maybe, but not mad. Mom says you're trying to take our house away." There it was. Sable was already poisoning the well, turning the children against me. "This house belongs to me, Ava. Your grandpa left it to me, but I would never take your home away. Do you understand the difference?" She nodded slowly. "Like how my bike is mine, but Liam can still ride it if I say yes. Exactly like that. So we can still live here. Of course you can. This is your home. It will always be your home." She hugged me tighter. "I'm glad. I like my room." Liam appeared in the doorway, rubbing sleep from his eyes. "What's happening?" "Grandma's going to a hotel," Ava said. "Why?" "Because sometimes grown-ups need breaks from each other, buddy." I opened my arms, and he came over letting me hug both of them. "But I'll see you both soon, I promise." "Can we visit you at the hotel?" Ava asked. "Anytime your dad says it's okay." They helped me carry my bags to the driveway, their small hands gripping the handles with serious concentration. The morning was bright and clear, the magnolia tree dropping white petals across the grass. Gordon's tree, I thought. Still standing, still beautiful, still strong. The black town car pulled up exactly on time. Marcus got out a large man with kind eyes and loaded my luggage while the children watched. Sable appeared on the porch arms, crossed face like stone. She didn't say anything, just stared at me with an expression that promised this wasn't over. I kissed Ava and Liam goodbye, told them I loved them, and got in the back seat. As Marcus pulled away, I looked back at the house one more time. Nathan's car was gone, he'd already left for work. Sable was herding the children inside, probably to tell them her version of events. And somewhere in that house were all the memories Gordon and I had made, all the laughter and love and ordinary moments that had built a life. But it was just a house. Gordon had taught me that. The real things that mattered, the things that made us who we were, those we carried inside us. No one could take those away. The Four Seasons was downtown, all glass and marble, and understated luxury. Marcus took my bags to the room, a suite on the executive floor, with views of the city, and a bathroom bigger than the garage I'd been sleeping in. When he left, I stood at the window and looked out at Houston, spreading beneath me all those buildings and streets and lives intersecting in ways people never saw. My phone buzzed. A text from Nathan. "Mom, where are you? Sable said you left." I stared at it for a long moment, trying to decide how to respond. Finally, I typed, "I'm at a hotel. I needed some space. We can talk later." "What hotel? I'll come by after work." I sent him the address, then turned my phone on silent. I needed time to think, to process what had happened this morning. I'd confronted Sable, revealed that I knew about the money, essentially declared war. What would she do next? The answer came faster than I expected. Around 2 in the afternoon, there was a knock on my door. I checked the peephole and saw Nathan standing in the hallway, still in his work clothes, looking pale and shaken. I opened the door. "You're early. We need to talk." He walked past me into the suite, then stopped and looked around. "Jesus, Mom, how much is this place costing?" "I can afford it." "Can you? Because Sable's been going through Dad's papers and she says there's not as much money as we thought. Sable is lying to you. I closed the door and gestured to the sitting area. Sit down, Nathan. It's time you knew everything. He sat, and I could see the exhaustion in every line of his body, the grief, the stress, the weight of trying to hold together a marriage that was falling apart. My son, my baby boy, lost in a situation he didn't understand. I sat across from him and took a deep breath. Your father left everything to me. The house, the Cancun villa, all the investment accounts and bonds and portfolios. Every single asset is in my name. That's not possible. Dad would have told me. He did it specifically so you wouldn't know. He was afraid of exactly this situation, Nathan. He was afraid Sable would try to get control of the money. That's crazy. Sable wouldn't. She has a petition filed to have me declared mentally incompetent so she can become my guardian and access the accounts. She's planning to divorce you as soon as she has control of what she thinks is your inheritance, and she's having an affair with Derek Cole, the investment broker, who's trying to get you to put $300,000 into a development deal that probably doesn't exist. Nathan's face went gray. How do you know all this? I found the petition. I heard her on the phone. I saw the way she looked at Derek at dinner. I leaned forward. Nathan, I know this is hard to hear. I know you love her, but she's not who you think she is. You're wrong. But his voice was weak, uncertain. You have to be wrong. Call Caleb Morton. He'll show you the estate documents, the petition, everything. Caleb knew about this. Your father made him promise to take care of me, to protect me from exactly this situation. Nathan stood up and walked to the window, staring out at the city. I could see his shoulders shaking, could see him trying to hold himself together. When he finally spoke, his voice was rough with emotion. The garage. She told me you'd be comfortable there, that it was just temporary until we figured out your living situation. I know. I should have fought harder, should have insisted you take one of the guest rooms. Yes, you should have. He turned to look at me, tears streaming down his face. I'm sorry, Mom. I'm so sorry. Dad died, and I just fell apart, and Sable seemed so sure of everything, and I let her take control because I couldn't handle making decisions. I know, baby. Grief makes us stupid sometimes. But she's my wife, the mother of my children. How could she do this to us? Some people see love as a transaction, see family as a resource to exploit. I stood up and went to him, put my hand on his arm. But you're not like that. You're your father's son, and once you see clearly what's happening, you'll do the right thing. What is the right thing? That's up to you to decide, but I can tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to fight the competency petition. I'm going to protect the assets your father worked so hard to build, and I'm going to make sure Ava and Liam are taken care of no matter what happens between you and Sable. Nathan wiped his face, trying to pull himself together. What about me? What do I do? You figure out if your marriage is worth saving. And if it's not, you end it with dignity and grace the way your father taught you. He nodded slowly. I need to think. Need to talk to Caleb, see those documents. Take all the time you need. I'm not going anywhere. After he left, I stood at the window and watched the sun start to sink toward the horizon, painting the buildings gold and orange. Somewhere out there, Sable was probably planning her next move. Somewhere, Derek Cole was probably helping her. And somewhere, Gordon was watching all of this, hoping I'd be strong enough to see it through. I pulled out my phone and called Caleb. Nathan knows everything. How'd he take it? About how you'd expect, shock, denial, grief. But he's coming to see you to verify what I told him. Good. The more he knows, the better prepared he'll be. What happens next? Next, we go to war. The competency hearing is scheduled for Monday. We've got 4 days to build our case and tear down theirs. His voice got harder. And Cass, when we're done, Sable and Derek are going to wish they'd never heard the name Reed. After I hung up, I ordered room service and ate dinner watching the city lights come on one by one. It was strange being alone in this beautiful space after 3 days in that garage. Strange, but not unwelcome. I could breathe here, could think clearly without the constant weight of humiliation pressing down on me. My phone buzzed around 9, a text from Nathan. I talked to Caleb. You were right about everything. I don't know what to do. I typed back, come see me tomorrow. We'll figure it out together. His response was immediate. Thank you for not giving up on me. I set the phone down and closed my eyes, feeling something release in my chest. My son was finding his way back to me. It was messy and painful, and there was still so far to go. But he was trying. That was enough for now. The next morning brought another knock on my door. This time it was Caleb carrying a briefcase and wearing the expression of a man about to go into battle. Ready to win this thing? He asked. I smiled. Let's burn their world down. Caleb spread the documents across the hotel suite's dining table like he was laying out evidence at a crime scene, which in a way he was. This is Derek Cole's background check, he said, tapping a folder. Real name, Derek Castellano. He's been running investment scams for 15 years. Changes his name every few years when things get hot. The Dallas development doesn't exist. The pre-sale's fabricated. He takes the money, disappears for 6 months, then resurfaces in a different city with a different name and the same pitch. I picked up the folder and flipped through it. Arrest records in 3 states, civil judgments, complaints filed with the SEC, a whole career built on taking advantage of people who wanted to believe they'd found the golden ticket. And Sable knows this? Oh, she knows. Caleb pulled out another folder, this one thicker. They've been working together for at least 2 years. I found bank records showing wire transfers from an account in her name to accounts in his various names. Small amounts, nothing that would trigger alerts, but consistent. Monthly payments. She was planning this before Gordon died. Long before. I think she married Nathan specifically for this. Saw a wealthy family, a weak son, an aging father. Calculated how long she'd need to wait before she could make her move. The coldness of it took my breath away. All those years, all those family dinners and holidays and birthdays, Sable had been playing a role, pretending to care about Nathan, about the children, about any of us, just waiting for Gordon to die so she could start stealing. How do we prove it? I asked. We already have. These documents are enough to kill the competency petition and probably get her charged with fraud. But there's more. He pulled out a laptop and opened it. I hired a private investigator to follow her. Want to see where she goes during those mysterious meetings? He turned the screen toward me. Security footage from a hotel timestamp from 2 days ago. Sable walking through the lobby in that red dress she'd worn, Derek Cole beside her with his hand on her lower back. They got into an elevator together. The next image was from 3 hours later, both of them leaving Sable's hair, messed up Derek's shirt untucked. She's been meeting him twice a week for the past 6 months. Always the same hotel, always the same room. She pays in cash, probably thinks that keeps it untraceable. Caleb closed the laptop. Nathan needs to see this. No. The word came out sharper than I intended. Not yet. He's already devastated. If we hit him with this now, it might destroy him completely. Cass, he has a right to know his wife is cheating on him. I know. But let's win the competency hearing first. Let's secure the assets and make sure Sable can't touch anything. Then we'll show Nathan everything and let him decide what to do with his marriage. Caleb studied me for a long moment. You're protecting him again. I'm his mother. That's what mothers do. Even when protecting him means letting him stay with a woman who's robbing him blind. He's not staying with her much longer, not after Monday, but he needs to come to that decision on his own, not have it forced on him by surveillance photos. I closed the folders and stacked them neatly. Trust me on this, Caleb. I know my son. If we corner him, he'll dig in his heels. But if we give him space to see the truth himself, he'll do the right thing. I hope you're right. He stood up and stretched. The hearing is at 9 Monday morning. Judge Harrison is solid. He won't be swayed by dramatics. We just need to present the facts clearly. Show that you're competent, that the petition is baseless, and that Sable has ulterior motives. What about Derek? Will he be there? I doubt it. He's smart enough to stay in the background, but I've already sent his information to the DA's office. Once this hearing is over, he's going to have bigger problems than a failed investment scam. After Caleb left, I sat at the table and went through the documents again, memorizing every detail. The arrest records, the fake companies, the wire transfers. The architecture of Sable's betrayal laid out in black and white. My phone rang. Nathan. "Mom, can I come up? I need to talk to you." "Of course." He arrived 10 minutes later, looking worse than yesterday. His eyes were bloodshot, his hair uncombed, his shirt wrinkled like he'd slept in it. He probably had. "I haven't been home," he said, sitting down heavily on the couch. "I got a hotel room last night. Couldn't face her." "What did you tell her?" "Nothing. Just said I had early meetings and would be out late. She didn't even ask where I was staying." He laughed bitterly. She was probably relieved. More time to talk to Derek without me around. "You know about Derek. Caleb told me everything. The scam, the fake development, all of it. I almost invested our entire savings, Mom. I almost handed $300,000 to a con artist because my wife vouched for him." "But you didn't. You asked questions. You listened to your instincts. Only because you made me think twice at dinner. If you hadn't been there, if you hadn't pushed back, I would have wired the money yesterday." He put his head in his hands. "How could I be so stupid? You're not stupid. You're grieving and overwhelmed, and you trusted the wrong person. That's human, Nathan. It's not a character flaw." "It feels like a character flaw. Dad would never have fallen for this." "Your father fell for things too. He just didn't talk about them." I sat down next to him. "When we were first married, he invested in a friend's restaurant, lost $30,000 when the place went under 6 months later. He was devastated, felt like an idiot for trusting someone who didn't know what they were doing, but you know what he learned from it? What? That trust has to be earned, not given freely. That love and business are separate things. And that the smartest people are the ones who admit their mistakes and learn from them instead of pretending they never happened." Nathan looked up at me and I saw Gordon in his eyes. The same shape, the same color, the same capacity for both strength and vulnerability. "What do I do about Sable? What do you want to do?" "I want to wake up and have this all be a nightmare. I want my wife back, the woman I thought I married. But that person never existed, did she? Maybe she did at first. Maybe there was a version of Sable who actually cared about you, who wanted to build a real life. But somewhere along the way, greed took over. And once greed gets its hooks in someone, it's almost impossible to pull them out." "So I just give up? Throw away my marriage?" "I can't tell you what to do, baby, but I can tell you that marriage requires two people who are committed to the same things: truth, respect, partnership. If one person is lying and scheming and planning to take everything, there's no marriage left to save." He was quiet for a long time, staring at his hands. Finally, he said, "I need to think about the kids, about what this will do to them. The kids will be fine. They're resilient and they have you and they have me. What they don't need is to grow up watching their father be disrespected and stolen from. That's not a model for healthy relationships." "When did you get so wise?" "I've always been wise. You just weren't listening." I smiled to soften the words. "But seriously, Nathan, I've been married for 42 years. I've watched relationships succeed and fail. And the ones that fail are always the ones where one person thinks they're smarter than the other, where there's no real partnership. That's what you have with Sable. She doesn't see you as a partner. She sees you as a mark." "God, that hurts to hear." "I know, but it's true, and you need to accept it before you can move forward." We sat in silence for a while, just being together the way we hadn't been in years. Not since Gordon got sick, and everything became about treatments and hope and denial. Just a mother and son figuring out how to survive the wreckage of betrayal. "What happens Monday?" Nathan asked eventually. "I go to court and prove I'm not incompetent. Caleb presents evidence that Sable filed the petition under false pretenses. The judge throws it out and probably sanctions her attorney for filing a frivolous claim. And then we figure out next steps. I change locks, secure accounts, make sure she can't access anything. You decide whether you want to file for divorce or try marriage counseling with a woman who's been stealing from you." When you put it like that, the choice seems obvious. It should be, but I know it's not that simple when you've built a life with someone, when you have children together. So I'm not going to push. I'm just going to support whatever decision you make. He hugged me then, holding on tight like he used to when he was little and scared of thunderstorms. I held him back, this man who was still my baby, and let him feel whatever he needed to feel. After he left, I called Ava. She answered on the third ring, her voice small and uncertain. "Hi, Grandma." "Hi, sweetheart. How are you doing?" "Okay, I guess. Mom's been really mean today. She yelled at Liam for spilling juice, and she told me to stop asking about you." "I'm sorry, baby. Grown-ups sometimes take their problems out on kids, and that's not fair." "Are you coming back home?" "Not to live, no. But I'll visit, and you and Liam can come visit me at my hotel anytime you want. Mom said you're trying to steal our house." The poison had already started spreading. "Ava, listen to me. I own the house because Grandpa left it to me. But it's your home, and nobody's taking it away from you. Do you understand?" "I think so. It's like how my bike is mine, but I let Liam use it." "Exactly like that. The house is mine, but you all can live there as long as you need to." "Okay." She sounded relieved. "I miss you, Grandma." "I miss you too, sweetheart. So much." After we hung up, I sat on the couch and let myself cry. Not the desperate sobs from the garage, but the quiet tears of someone who's tired of fighting, tired of being strong, just tired. Gordon should be here. He should be the one handling this, protecting the family, making sure Nathan was okay. But he wasn't here, and the job had fallen to me, and some days it felt like too much. But I wiped my tears and ordered dinner and went through the documents again, because that's what you do when you're the last line of defense. You don't get to fall apart. You get to be strong even when you don't feel like it. Saturday morning, Caleb called with news. Derek Cole's in the wind. He checked out of his apartment yesterday, closed his bank accounts, disconnected his phone. The DA wants to issue a warrant, but they need more time to build the case. Did he warn Sable? Probably. She's been calling his old number nonstop, according to the phone records we subpoenaed. My guess is he realized we were onto him and bailed before things got too hot. So she's alone now. No partner, no escape plan. Looks that way, which makes her more dangerous, Cass. Cornered animals do unpredictable things. I'll be careful. I'm serious. Don't go anywhere alone. Don't open your door unless you know who it is, and if she contacts you directly, record the conversation. I promised I would, but part of me didn't believe Sable was that desperate. She was calculating, careful. She wouldn't do anything that could jeopardize her position with Nathan or her access to the children. I was wrong. Saturday afternoon, there was a knock on my hotel room door. I checked the peephole and saw Sable standing there, wearing jeans and a sweater, her hair pulled back, no makeup. She looked younger, without all the polish, more vulnerable, almost human. I opened the door, but kept the chain on. "What do you want, Sable?" "To talk. Please, Cassandra. Just 5 minutes." Against my better judgment, I undid the chain and let her in. She walked to the middle of the room and turned to face me, and I saw tears in her eyes. Real tears, not the fake kind she'd worn at Gordon's funeral. "I'm sorry," she said, "for everything. The garage, the petition, all of it. I was wrong." "Yes, you were. I know you probably don't believe me, but I really am sorry. I got greedy. I saw all that money, and I convinced myself that Nathan would never step up, that you'd just waste it, that I deserved it more. But I was wrong about all of that. You were wrong about a lot of things, like thinking I was stupid enough to fall for this performance." Her face hardened. "It's not a performance. I'm trying to apologize." "No, you're trying to manipulate me one more time, trying to see if you can salvage this situation before Monday's hearing destroys you completely." I crossed my arms. "It's not going to work, Sable. I know about Derek, about the scam, about the affair. I know everything." "Then you know I'm desperate." The tears were gone now, replaced by something colder. "You know I have nothing left to lose." "Is that a threat?" "It's a fact. Derek's gone. Nathan won't talk to me, and on Monday I'm going to be humiliated in court. So I'm asking you one last time to work with me." "Work with you how?" "Drop the hearing. Tell the judge you've reconsidered, that you and Nathan have worked things out. I'll move out of the house quietly. I'll sign whatever custody agreement Nathan wants. I just need a little money to start over. $200,000. That's nothing to you. $200,000 to go away quietly. To not make things uglier than they need to be. I looked at her and felt something like pity. She'd played the game so carefully, manipulated so skillfully, and still ended up here begging for scraps from the woman she'd tried to destroy. No, I said simply. You get nothing. You leave with whatever you came into this marriage with, and you never contact my son or my grandchildren again. You can't do that. I have rights. You had rights. You forfeited them when you filed a fraudulent petition and tried to steal from your husband. Any judge in Texas will give Nathan sole custody, given what Caleb's about to present on Monday. Her face went white, then red. You think you've won, but you haven't. I still have cards to play. Like what Derek's gone. Your scam is exposed. Your affair is documented. You have nothing left, Sable. I have Nathan's children. I can turn them against you, against him. I can make sure they never want to see either of you again. You could try. But kids aren't stupid. They see more than you think. And right now, they see a mother who's angry and mean and barely pays attention to them, while their father and grandmother actually care about their well-being. Get out of my way, Cassandra, or I'll make you regret it. I'm already in your way, and there's nothing you can do about it. She stared at me for a long moment, and I could see her trying to figure out if she could physically intimidate me. I'm smaller than her older, weaker. In a fight, she'd probably win, but I had something she didn't. I had the law on my side and documentation and the truth. Get out of my hotel room, I said quietly, and don't come back. She left without another word, slamming the door hard enough to rattle the pictures on the wall. I locked it behind her and called Caleb immediately. She just threatened me, said she'd turn the kids against Nathan and me if I didn't pay her $200,000 to go away quietly. Did you record it? No, I wasn't thinking. Damn. Okay, it's still good to know. I'll have the investigator start watching her more closely. If she tries anything before Monday, we'll have it documented. Caleb, what if she does something to the kids? Nathan's already planning to move them out. He's going to pick them up from school on Monday and take them straight to his hotel. Sable won't have access until after the hearing. That eased some of my panic, but not all of it. Sable had looked unhinged when she left, desperate, in a way that made people do stupid things. Sunday was the longest day of my life. I stayed in the hotel room going over my testimony with Caleb, making sure I knew every detail of every document. Nathan came by in the evening looking more settled than he had in days. I filed for divorce, he said. Emergency petition citing fraud and infidelity. The papers will be served Monday morning right before the competency hearing. How do you feel about that? Relieved honestly, like I finally made a decision instead of just letting things happen to me. He sat down. I talked to Ava and Liam, told them Mom and I were having problems, that they'd be staying with me for a while. Ava asked if it was because of you. What did you tell her? The truth, that it had nothing to do with you, that I'd made some mistakes in trusting the wrong person. She seemed to understand. He smiled sadly. She's smart, that kid. Smarter than her dad. You're plenty smart. You just forgot for a while. Yeah, I did. He looked at me. Thank you, Mom, for not giving up on me even when I didn't deserve it. You always deserve it. You're my son. Monday morning came too fast and too slow. I woke at 5, showered and dressed in my best suit, the navy blue one Gordon had bought me for his company's anniversary gala. In the mirror, I looked like the woman I used to be. Confident, put together, someone who belonged in a courtroom instead of a garage. Caleb picked me up at 8. The courthouse was downtown, an imposing building with marble columns and the weight of authority. We went through security and up to the 3rd floor where family court was held. Nathan was already there, sitting on a bench outside the courtroom. He stood when he saw us, and I could see he'd barely slept, but he'd shaved and put on a suit, and he looked more like himself than he had in weeks. Is she here? I asked. Not yet. Her lawyer is, though. He nodded toward a thin man in a cheap suit shuffling papers near the courtroom door. At 8:45, Sable arrived. She was wearing a conservative black dress and minimal makeup, playing the role of concerned daughter-in-law. When she saw Nathan, something flickered across her face. Surprise, maybe, or fear. He didn't look away, just met her eyes steadily until she was the one who turned. A bailiff opened the courtroom doors. Reed competency hearing, Judge Harrison presiding. We filed in and took our seats. The courtroom was smaller than I expected, more intimate. Judge Harrison was already at the bench, a man in his 70s with white hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. "Good morning," he said. "This is a petition for competency evaluation filed by Nathan Reed regarding his mother, Cassandra Reed. I've reviewed the initial filing and I have some questions before we proceed." "Mr. Morton, you're representing Mrs. Reed." Caleb stood. "Yes, Your Honor." "And Mr. Pearson, you're representing the petitioner." Sable's lawyer stood. "Yes, Your Honor." "Mr. Pearson, I'm going to be frank with you. This petition is thin, very thin. The claims are vague. The supporting evidence is minimal, and frankly, it reads like a fishing expedition. Do you have anything substantial to present today?" Pearson shuffled his papers nervously. "Your Honor, we have testimony from the petitioner regarding Mrs. Reed's recent behavior, specifically confusion regarding financial matters and living arrangements." "Recent behavior meaning what exactly? How recent are we talking?" "Within the last 2 weeks, Your Honor." 2 weeks. Judge Harrison looked at me over his reading glasses. "Mrs. Reed, your husband passed away when?" 9 days ago, Your Honor." "And Mr. Pearson, you're telling me that a widow exhibiting signs of grief and stress 9 days after her husband's death is evidence of incompetence?" "Your Honor, it's more than that. She's been making concerning statements, behaving erratically. I'd like to hear from Mr. Reed." The judge looked at Nathan. "Sir, you filed this petition. Do you still believe your mother is incompetent?" Nathan stood slowly. The courtroom went silent, everyone waiting to see which way he'd jump. "No, Your Honor," he said clearly. "I don't. I was wrong to file it, and I'm withdrawing my support for the petition." The words hung in the air like a bell that had just rung. Sable made a small sound, something between a gasp and a cry. Her lawyer looked like he'd been punched. Judge Harrison raised his eyebrows. "This is your mother we're discussing. You're sure about this?" "I'm sure. I filed the petition under pressure and without fully understanding the situation. My mother is completely competent. More competent than I am, frankly." "Mr. Pearson, do you have any response to that?" The lawyer looked at Sable, who was staring at Nathan with pure hatred. "Your Honor, we'd like to request a continuance to consult with our client." "Denied. This petition was baseless from the start, and now your own petitioner is contradicting it. Motion to dismiss granted." He banged his gavel. "Mrs. Reed, you're free to go. Mr. Pearson, I'm sanctioning you $5,000 for filing a frivolous claim. If I see your name on anything like this again, the sanctions will be much steeper. We're adjourned." Just like that, it was over. 9 days of hell ended in 15 minutes by a judge who saw through the lies immediately. We filed out of the courtroom. In the hallway, Sable was screaming at her lawyer, at Nathan, at anyone who would listen. A bailiff was trying to calm her down, while Pearson packed his briefcase and practically ran for the elevators. Nathan came over to me, and for the first time since Gordon died, he looked at peace. "I'm sorry, Mom, for all of it." "I know, baby. I forgive you." Caleb shook Nathan's hand. "That took guts, son. Your father would be proud." We left Sable in the hallway and walked out into the bright Houston morning. The sun was shining, traffic was moving, the world kept turning, and for the first time in over a week, I felt like I could breathe. The week after the hearing, I moved back into my house. Not the garage, not a guest room, but the master bedroom where Gordon and I had slept for 20 years. I stood in the doorway that first afternoon, looking at the 4-poster bed we'd picked out together, the dresser where he'd kept his cufflinks, the window seat where I used to read while he worked at his desk. Everything was exactly as I'd left it, but somehow it felt different, lighter, mine again. Nathan had changed all the locks the day after the hearing. Sable had exactly 4 hours to collect her personal belongings under the supervision of Caleb's investigator. Then she was escorted off the property. She'd screamed the whole time, threatened lawsuits, threatened to take the children, threatened everything she could think of. But her threats were empty now, and everyone knew it. I heard she was staying with her mother in Dallas. The divorce papers had been served, and she'd hired a Barracuda attorney who was demanding half of everything. It would have been funny if it wasn't so predictable. The woman who'd tried to steal $23 million was now arguing she deserved community property from a marriage built on lies. Nathan's lawyer had a different view. Fraud, he said, voids the good faith requirement for community property. Sable would get exactly what she brought into the marriage, which was nothing, and not a penny more. I was in the kitchen making coffee when Ava and Liam came home from school. Nathan had moved back into the house too, taking one of the guest rooms while we figured out the new normal. The kids had adjusted faster than I'd expected, the way children do when the chaos finally stops and life becomes predictable again. "Grandma?" Liam ran into the kitchen and wrapped his arms around my waist. "Are you making cookies?" "I could be." "What kind do you want? Chocolate chip? With extra chips?" "Yes." He pumped his fist like I just promised him the world. Ava came in more slowly, her backpack dragging on the floor. She looked tired, older than 8. The divorce was hitting her harder than Liam, who was too young to fully understand what was happening. "Hey, sweetheart," I said gently. "How was school?" "Fine." She sat at the kitchen island, the same spot where I'd watched Sable check her phone and ignore her children. "Mom called me at lunch." Nathan appeared in the doorway, his expression immediately alert. "What did she say?" "That you and Grandma turned her into a bad guy. That none of this is her fault." Ava looked at me with those 2 old eyes. "Is that true?" I wiped my hands and came around the island to sit next to her. "Your mom made some choices that hurt people. Your dad and I are dealing with the consequences of those choices. But none of this is about you being a bad guy or a good guy. It's about grown-ups who forgot how to be honest with each other." She said you stole her money. "I didn't steal anything. The money was always mine from your grandpa. Your mom wanted it, but wanting something doesn't make it yours. Like when Liam wants my toys." "Exactly like that." She nodded, slowly processing. "I miss her. Even though she was mean, sometimes she's still my mom. I know, baby, and you're allowed to miss her. You're allowed to love her. Those feelings don't go away just because she made mistakes." "Can I still see her?" Nathan came over and knelt down next to Ava's chair. "Of course you can. We're working out a schedule where you and Liam can visit her on weekends. But she's not going to live here anymore. Is that okay?" Ava's eyes filled with tears. "I guess so. I just wish everything was normal again." "Me too, sweetheart. But sometimes normal changes, and we have to figure out a new normal. And this new normal has Grandma living with us, which is pretty great, right?" She looked at me and smiled through her tears. "Yeah, that's the best part." I pulled her into a hug and let her cry, this little girl who'd been caught in the middle of adult warfare through no fault of her own. Liam came over too, sensing his sister needed comfort, and the 4 of us sat there in a knot of arms and tears and the messy love that holds families together, even when they're breaking apart. That night, after the kids were in bed, Nathan and I sat on the back porch with glasses of wine. The magnolia tree rustled in the breeze, dropping white petals across the grass like snow. It was the first peaceful moment we'd had together since Gordon died. "I need to tell you something," Nathan said, staring at his glass, "about why I let it get so bad, why I didn't stand up to her sooner." "You don't have to explain." "No, I do, because I've been thinking about it a lot and I figured out what happened." He took a breath. "When Dad got sick, I couldn't handle it. Couldn't handle watching him deteriorate, couldn't handle knowing I was going to lose him. So I checked out. I let Sable take control of everything because it was easier than facing reality." "That's understandable, Nathan. Grief makes us do strange things. But it's not an excuse. I abandoned you when you needed me most. I let her put you in a garage for God's sake. What kind of son does that?" "A son who was overwhelmed and scared and trying to survive the best way he knew how." "You're not a bad person, Nathan. You just made some bad choices." "Dad would be so disappointed in me." "Your father would understand. He made mistakes too, you know. When his mother died, he threw himself into work and barely talked to me for months. Everyone handles loss differently. The important thing is that you woke up before it was too late." Nathan was quiet for a long time, watching the tree move in the darkness. I keep thinking about that dinner, the way you asked Derek those questions, the way he couldn't answer them. If you hadn't been there, if you hadn't been brave enough to speak up, even when Sable was treating you like garbage, I would have lost everything. You wouldn't have lost everything. You would have lost money. That's replaceable. Not $300,000. Not for me. Even $300,000. Money comes and goes, Nathan. What matters is that you still have your integrity, your children, and a chance to start over. Those things are worth more than any investment. He reached over and squeezed my hand. When did you get so wise? I've always been wise. You just started listening. I smiled to take the sting out of it. But seriously, I learned a lot in 42 years of marriage. Your father taught me that strength isn't about never falling down. It's about getting back up and trying again. I'm trying. I know you are. And you're doing great. The next few weeks settled into a rhythm. Nathan went to work, the kids went to school, and I ran the household the way I'd always done before Sable inserted herself into our lives. But it was different now. Better. Nathan actually talked to me about his day, asked my opinion on decisions, treated me like a partner instead of an obligation. The kids spent more time with me helping in the kitchen and doing homework at the island while I cooked dinner. Sable got her weekend visitations supervised at first because her lawyer had worried she might try to disappear with the children. But she showed up, played nice, and after a few weeks, the supervision was dropped. Whatever else she did seem to love Ava and Liam in her own way. Just not enough to be honest with them or their father. The divorce moved forward slowly, grinding through the legal system with all the grace of a garbage truck. Sable's lawyer kept trying to negotiate, kept claiming she deserved more, but Nathan's lawyer held firm. Fraud voids everything. She'd get nothing. I stayed out of it, mostly letting Nathan handle his own mess. But I kept detailed records of every interaction, every phone call, every time Sable tried to manipulate the situation, just in case. 2 months after the hearing, Caleb called with news. Derek Cole was arrested in New Mexico, running the same scam on a different group of investors. The DA in Dallas wants to know if Nathan will testify. Will he have to? Probably. They need someone to establish the pattern, show that Derek targets people going through grief or transition. Nathan's a perfect witness. He'll do it. He wants closure on all of this. Good, because there's more. The DA found evidence that Sable was involved in at least 3 other scams with Derek. Different names, different cities, but same MO. She'd befriend wealthy widows or single men, gain their trust. Then Derek would come in with an investment opportunity. They'd split the take and move on. The coldness of it still had the power to shock me. So Nathan was just another mark. Exactly. And the DA thinks there might be more victims out there. They're asking permission to look through Sable's financial records, see if they can identify other people she scammed. Do whatever you need to do. Just keep my grandchildren out of it. That's the tricky part. If Sable gets charged with fraud, she's looking at serious prison time, which means Nathan might end up with full custody by default. I thought about that for a long moment. Would that be the worst thing? For the kids? Probably not. But it'll be hard on them knowing their mother is in prison. Harder than knowing she's a con artist who married their father to steal from him. Fair point. Nathan took the news better than I expected. He'd reached some kind of acceptance about who Sable really was, had stopped trying to find the good in someone who'd never been good to begin with. If she goes to prison, we'll deal with it, he said. The kids will get therapy. We'll be honest with them in age-appropriate ways, and we'll make sure they know none of this is their fault. That's very mature of you. I'm learning from the best, he smiled. You handled all of this with so much grace, Mom. You could have destroyed Sable in court, aired all the dirty laundry, made her look like a monster, but you kept it focused on the facts, on protecting the family. Because that's what matters. Not revenge, not making her suffer, just protecting the people I love. Well, you did that. We're safe because of you. One Saturday afternoon, 3 months after I'd moved back home, I was in the garden planting new flowers when a car pulled up. I didn't recognize it, a rental sedan with tinted windows. My first thought was Sable come to cause trouble, But when the door opened, a woman I'd never seen before got out. She was in her 60s, well-dressed, with gray hair and kind eyes. She walked up the driveway, slowly taking in the house. "Can I help you?" I asked, standing up and brushing dirt from my knees. "Are you Cassandra Reed?" "Yes." "My name is Margaret Walsh. I think your daughter-in-law scammed my brother out of $200,000. I invited her in and made tea while she told her story. Her brother had been a widower, lonely and grieving. He'd met a woman named Sandra Hart at a grief support group. Sandra had been sympathetic. Understanding had seemed to really care about him. Then she'd introduced him to an investment broker named Dennis Carter, who had this amazing opportunity in commercial real estate. "Let me guess," I said. The opportunity fell through, the money disappeared, and Sandra and Dennis vanished. "How did you know?" "Because Sandra Hart is Sable Reed and Dennis Carter is Derek Cole. They've been running this scam for years." Margaret's face crumpled. "My brother killed himself. 3 months after he lost the money, he couldn't handle the shame and guilt. He left a note saying he'd failed his family, that he was a fool who'd trusted the wrong person." The room went very quiet. I reached across the table and took Margaret's hand, this stranger who'd lost someone she loved, to the same people who'd tried to destroy my family. "I'm so sorry," I said. "I want her to pay. I want them both to pay." But the police in Arizona said there wasn't enough evidence that my brother had given the money willingly. That's because they didn't know what we know now. But the DA in Dallas is building a case. If you're willing to testify, if you're willing to share your brother's story, it could help put them both away. "I'll do whatever it takes." I called Caleb immediately, and he connected Margaret with the DA's office. Within a week, they'd identified 4 more victims, all following the same pattern. Grieving people, false friendship, fake investment opportunity, stolen money. The total take was over $2 million. Sable was arrested on a Wednesday morning. Nathan got the call from his lawyer while he was at work. He came home early, pale and shaken, and we sat in the kitchen while he processed it. "Part of me feels relieved," he said, "like this is finally over. But part of me feels guilty, like I should have seen it sooner, should have protected those other people somehow." "You couldn't have known. She fooled everyone, Nathan. That's what con artists do." "But one of them killed himself, Mom. A man died because of her." "No, a man died because of the shame and isolation that comes with being victimized. That's on Sable and Derek, not on you or anyone else they fooled." Telling Ava and Liam was the hardest conversation I'd ever witnessed. Nathan sat them down on the couch and explained in simple terms that their mother had made some very bad choices, had hurt people, and taken money that didn't belong to her, and that she was going to have to go to jail for a while. Ava cried. Liam looked confused, too young to really understand what jail meant. But Nathan held them both and promised that he would always be there, that I would always be there, that they were safe and loved no matter what. Later that night, after the kids were finally asleep, I found Nathan on the back porch again, staring at the magnolia tree. "Dad would know what to say to them," he said. "He always knew the right words. And your father would tell you that the right words matter less than being present, than showing up day after day and proving through your actions that they can count on you. And you're doing that, Nathan. You're being the father they need." I hope so. I keep thinking about how close I came to losing them. If you hadn't fought back, if you'd just accepted what Sable was doing, she would have taken everything. The money, the house, probably custody of the kids. And I would have let her, because I was too weak to see what was happening. But that didn't happen. You found your strength when it mattered. That's what counts. He looked at me with tears in his eyes. "I don't know what I would have done without you. You would have figured it out, because you're Gordon's son, and Gordon never gave up on anything that mattered." The trial happened 6 months later. I sat in the courtroom every day watching as the DA methodically built the case against Sable and Derek. Victim after victim took the stand, telling stories that were all variations of the same theme. Trust betrayed money, stolen lives destroyed. Sable sat at the defense table in a gray suit, her hair pulled back, makeup minimal, playing the role of remorseful defendant. But her eyes were hard, calculating, always working the angles. Even now, even facing 20 years in prison, she thought she could manipulate her way out. Nathan testified on the fourth day. He was nervous but clear, explaining how Sable had isolated him from me, had pushed him to file the competency petition, had almost gotten him to invest in Derek's fake development. The jury listened intently, and I could see them connecting the dots, understanding the pattern. On the seventh day, Margaret Walsh testified about her brother. She broke down on the stand, sobbing as she read his suicide note aloud. The courtroom was absolutely silent, except for her voice and the sound of people crying in the gallery. That's when I saw it. A flicker of something on Sable's face. Not remorse exactly, but recognition. The understanding that she'd pushed too far, that this time the consequences were real. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. When they came back, the forewoman stood and read the verdict. Guilty on all counts. Sable's face went white. Her lawyer put his hand on her arm, but she shook him off. She turned and looked directly at me, and for a moment we just stared at each other across the courtroom. 2 women who'd gone to war and only one had survived. I didn't smile, didn't gloat, just held her gaze until she looked away. The judge sentenced her to 15 years. Derek got 20. Neither would be eligible for parole until they'd served at least 10. Nathan took Ava and Liam to see her before she was transferred to the state prison. I stayed home, giving them space for their goodbye. When they came back, the kids were quiet and subdued. Ava went straight to her room. Liam crawled into my lap and just sat there, not crying, just needing to be held. "She said it was Grandma's fault," he whispered. "Said none of this would have happened if Grandma hadn't been mean to her." "That's not true, buddy. Your mom made her own choices. Nobody forced her to do the things she did." "I know. Dad explained it, but it still makes me sad." "It's okay to be sad. It's okay to miss her, even though she did bad things." "Will she ever come home?" "Not for a long time, but you can write her letters if you want, and visit her sometimes. She's still your mom, even if she made mistakes." He nodded against my chest, and we sat there until he fell asleep. A year after the trial, Nathan met someone new. Her name was Claire, and she was an elementary school teacher who loved hiking and terrible puns. She was kind to the kids, respectful to me, and completely honest about everything. The opposite of Sable in every way that mattered. I liked her immediately. They took things slow, dating for months before she even met the children. When she finally came to dinner, Ava was suspicious and protective, but Liam took to her right away. By dessert, even Ava was laughing at Claire's jokes. "What do you think?" Nathan asked me later after Claire had gone home. "I think she's lovely. I think you deserve someone who makes you happy." "It's only been a year. Is that too soon?" There's no timeline for healing Nathan. If you're ready, you're ready. And if you're not, that's okay too. But don't let guilt about Sable keep you from moving forward. Dad would have liked her. Yes, he would have. I stood on the porch that night after everyone was asleep and looked up at the stars. The same stars I'd looked at from the garage, from the hotel, from every place I'd been during those dark weeks when I thought I'd lost everything. But I hadn't lost anything that mattered. Not really. I'd lost my husband, but his love stayed with me. I'd lost my sense of security, but I'd found strength I didn't know I had. I'd lost my place in my own home, but I'd taken it back and made it mine again. And Sable had lost everything. Her freedom, her children, her chance to reinvent herself in another city with another Mark. She'd gambled on breaking me and lost. The magnolia tree rustled in the breeze, and I could almost hear Gordon's voice on the wind. "Proud of you, Cass. Always knew you were stronger than you looked." 2 years after Gordon died, I went to Cancun. The villa was exactly as we'd left it, white walls and red tile and windows overlooking the ocean. I spent a week there walking the beach and eating fresh fish and letting the sun warm my skin. On the last night, I sat on the balcony with a glass of wine and watched the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink and gold. I thought about everything that had happened, everything I'd survived. The garage, the betrayal, the fight to reclaim my life. And I thought about Margaret Walsh's brother, the man who hadn't survived, about all the victims who'd believed Sable's lies and paid the price. I pulled out my phone and called Margaret. We'd stayed in touch, bonding over our shared experience. I've been thinking, I said, about starting a foundation to help people who've been scammed by con artists, provide legal help, therapy, financial counseling, all the things that might have saved your brother. That's a beautiful idea, Cassandra. I want to name it after him, if that's okay with you. She was quiet for a moment, and I could hear her crying softly. He would have loved that. Thank you. The foundation launched 6 months later. We helped 32 people in the first year alone, and the number grew every month. Nathan ran the business side, Claire helped with outreach, and I met with victims sharing my story and showing them that survival was possible. Ava and Liam grew up strong and healthy with therapy and love and the knowledge that even when bad things happen, family shows up. Ava became fiercely protective of people being treated unfairly, already showing signs of the lawyer she'd eventually become. Liam stayed sweet and gentle, the kind of boy who noticed when someone was sad and tried to make them smile. They saw Sable once a month at the prison. She'd changed her hair, lost weight, looked older than her years. The kids came back from those visits quiet and thoughtful, processing in their own ways. But they had Nathan, they had me, they had Claire, and they had each other. That was enough. 5 years after Gordon died, I was sitting in the garden when my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Mrs. Reed. This is Warden Patterson from Gatesville Correctional. I'm calling about Sable Reed. My heart stopped. Is she okay? She's fine. But she's asked if you'd be willing to visit her, says she has something important to tell you. I sat there for a long moment, torn between curiosity and the desire to never see that woman's face again. But something in me needed closure, needed to hear whatever she wanted to say. I'll come, I said finally. The prison was 3 hours north, all concrete and chain link and guard towers. They searched me, made me leave my phone in a locker, then led me to a visiting room with cheap tables and vending machines. Sable was already there wearing an orange jumpsuit, her hair graying at the temples. We sat across from each other, neither speaking at first. She looked tired, worn down by years of prison routine and the knowledge that she'd destroyed her own life. Thank you for coming, she said finally. What did you want to tell me? That I'm sorry, really, truly sorry. Not because I got caught, not because I'm in here, but because I hurt you and Nathan and the kids. Because I destroyed families and people's lives for money I didn't even need. What do you want me to say? That I forgive you? No, I don't deserve forgiveness. I just wanted you to know that I finally understand what I took from people, what I took from you. She looked down at her hands. I had everything. A good husband, beautiful children, a home. And I threw it away because I thought money was more important than love. Money is easy, Sable. Love is the hard part. I know that now. Too late, but I know. We sat in silence for a moment. Part of me wanted to tear into her to list all the ways she'd hurt my family, but looking at her now broken and gray and alone, I felt something unexpected. Not forgiveness exactly, but a kind of peace. She was already living with the consequences of her choices. I didn't need to add to them. Ava and Liam are doing well, I said. They're happy, healthy, growing up into good people. Nathan found someone new, someone honest. We all survived what you tried to do to us. I'm glad. That's what I wanted to hear. But you should know something. That man in Arizona, Margaret Walsh's brother, the one who killed himself. We started a foundation in his name. We've helped hundreds of people rebuild their lives after being scammed. So in a weird way, you created something good. Not on purpose, but you did. Tears streamed down her face. I can't take that back. Can't undo what I did. No, you can't. But you can live with it. You can use this time to become someone better. Not for me, not for Nathan, but for yourself. Because when you get out in 10 years, you're going to have to look in the mirror and live with who you see. I don't know if I can do that. Then that's on you. I stood up. Goodbye, Sable. I hope you find whatever it is you're looking for. I walked out without looking back through security and past the guard towers and into the parking lot where sunshine and fresh air waited. I got in my car and sat there for a moment, feeling lighter than I had in years. She was behind bars. I was free, and Gordon would have been proud of the woman I'd become, the strength I'd found, the grace I'd managed to hold on to, even when everything was falling apart. I drove home singing to old songs on the radio, windows down, feeling the Texas heat on my face. When I pulled into the driveway, Nathan's car was there, and Claire's and I could hear children's laughter from the backyard. Ava and Liam playing with Claire's nephews who'd come to visit. 3 generations of family, messy and imperfect and real. I went inside and found Nathan in the kitchen making lemonade. He looked up when I walked in and smiled. "How'd it go?" "It went," she apologized. "Do you believe her?" "I think she believes herself, which is probably as close to real remorse as Sable gets." I took the pitcher from him and poured myself a glass. "But it doesn't matter anymore. She's there, we're here, and life goes on." "Amen to that." He clinked his glass against mine. "Dad would be proud of you, Mom, of how you handled all of this." "I know. I can feel him sometimes, you know, in the way the magnolia tree moves and the sound of the kids laughing. He's still here with us." "Yeah, he is." We went outside and joined the others, and I sat in the shade of Gordon's tree while children played and family gathered, and the afternoon stretched out warm and golden. This was what I'd fought for. Not the money, not the house, not even justice. This, the simple, ordinary beauty of a family that survived and came out stronger. That night, after everyone had gone and the house was quiet, I went to the master bedroom and opened the drawer where I kept Gordon's letters. There was one I hadn't read yet, one he'd marked, "Open when you remember who you are." I opened it with shaking hands. "My dearest Cass, if you're reading this, you've been through hell. I knew Sable would try something after I died, knew she'd see you as weak and try to take advantage, but I also knew you'd fight back because you're the strongest person I've ever known. You just forget sometimes, let people convince you you're less than you are, but you're not less. You're everything. You're the woman who built a life with me from nothing, who raised a good son, who never backed down from a fight that mattered. I'm proud of you, Cass. So damn proud. And I'm watching over you wherever I am, cheering you on. Live your life. Take risks. Fall in love again if you want to. Just promise me you'll never let anyone make you feel small again. Because you, Cassandra Reed, are a force of nature. Always have been. I love you forever, Gordon." I folded the letter carefully and put it back in the drawer. Then I climbed into bed, into sheets that still smelled faintly of Gordon's cologne, and closed my eyes. I'd lost my husband, my sense of security, and nearly my home. But I'd found something more valuable. I'd found myself the woman Gordon always knew I could be, and I was never letting her go again.